content. So kind of displayed a little bit differently, and you can see a couple different ways. So it's a little bit inconsistent in that sense. And in the new designs, hopefully, you can see how we kind of address that. So maybe I'll kind of have you guys focus your attention on the new design rather than the old one here. So these are the new grids we chose, and as you can see that there are significantly less events per page. We capped it around like 5. Oh. So we did cap it around 5 events per page, and we did come up with a new box size. It's the F, which is a gigantic,
or friggin' huge.
Huge. Hopefully it turns out all right. We have some nice mocks. So we have that. And let me debut that. There you go. Kind of the new design here, and I can scroll through a couple. But for one, maybe right off the bat, you'll see kind of the absence of these heavy boxes. So basically, instead of kind of trying to outline each event, we're just going to rely on kind of the margin between each event to kind of delineate it, and kind of these light, subtle lines between each side. Here's those 2 gigantic C's or F-style box sizes. You can also notice in some of these grids how we reduce the amount of imagery. So we'll have rules in place that say something like, if you have a gigantic image in the grid, or if you already have 2 article images, go ahead and fall back onto maybe events where we don't show the image. And I think the other kind of big change, as you can see, is that the attribution now appears at the top. And it's nice because I think it'll provide a very consistent way in which you can kind of anchor each event, each box. So you basically kind of lead with kind of who shared it and some of their information, and the content will fall below. And you can alter the content a bit to kind of emphasize the headline or emphasize the important part. But we feel kind of free at the top. It again emphasizes the identity a little bit, and also it allows us to do things like lead with a comment. So if someone did speak, I feel that's pretty important. So this design here indicates that Butch here from Pulp Fiction, he shared this, but also kind of made a comment about it. Now in the previous design, this comment would be very subdued towards the bottom. We didn't quite kind of see it very well. In this case, you can kind of read it in such a way in which you kind of see who they are, what they said, and what the content is. And maybe I'll pause it there. Maybe I don't know if Corey wants to say anything, but
Are you taking comments as well?
yeah, sure. Let's go for it.
So I love the simplified design. I'm not sure about putting the person up on top. It would be interesting to test it both ways.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is the headline is the punchy thing. At 500 billion Apple, and then I've got this thing above it. I don't know. It'd be interesting to test it both ways. But I love the simplification you guys.
Nice headline, though.
Where to start?
Okay, I'm just going to say, I think what you have to do is I think that even though you had a lot of content in the other one and all the boxes, I think something with the strong lines at the top, some of the sequence of the things, set it up more unique. This is really text heavy, and for a lot of people, like I don't know.
Are like there's too many images or too much text on
I don't know. I actually like the reading of the people. I do like that because it is more member-centric, which is what we're about. But there's something about, I think something with the design is still lacking, and I think we're stronger there.
I think the problem that we faced with the first design is that we can't control how things appear on the grid. So our goal was basically to minimize the amount of imagery so that it doesn't really become a very overwhelming page. And we tried to create some layouts that have a lot of photos, a lot of content, and the next one is kind of more like a grid. You have 2, and then you kind of start breaking different grids within each page. So if you read it's just a more diverse type of grid. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's just it's too much text. It's impossible. I go through a lot of stuff, and I try to minimize as much as I can.
And I think before, because you had those bold lines, at the top of it, kind of made your eyes. Yeah, it would make it a little easier for your eyes the article is starting, and here you lost everything.
I have to say, same thing, I like it so much better. I, I think it looks more organized and it's easier for me to see the, there's obvious stuff that was, to me, it looks a bit much more organized than this, that this looks really text-heavy to me. That obviously the bigger area you have, the more text you have from the copy, which probably made it heavier. And also, the losing the distinctive, the Tetris, sort of box here, with the kind of, with that little hard to, huh?
Like it's a little bit too symmetric maybe here.
Well, but then you have like this equal amount of box with like heavy text that kind of stops and then goes to the next line, and it's really like, my eye, I can't read.
Maybe it's like there's illuminators here or something.
And it's really subtle, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like a dotted line. It's not as much as this one, even though you have lots of box. This is obviously got stuff going on. And with the heavier hairline, it looks a little bit more organized.
So you don't feel that they're leading with a photograph and a headline below it is enough, point for people to really see that that's a headline. That's like a news or a box. You feel that the line actually works better than?
This line was working better for me,
Okay.
yeah.
It might be the treatment.
Or it could be the box or
I think the treatment
something.
person is right, but maybe it's just the middle treatment of it. And like, and you have such nice details, it's like, such a little, yeah, that one?
It's interesting, because Steve Johnson hates it. Yeah, his consistent feedback was, it looks broken. It looks like an error.
Well, I understand what he's getting at, because you got, you feel like it, if they're saying it should be attached to it, to the box, but,
But conceptually, I don't think that one way is, wrong or
but
right.
that's what,
It's
yeah,
just,
that's just a preference thing.
yeah.
Right now, that you're gonna have, I don't know what the difference is between blue and gray, but then, the bubble size is gonna be different. So now, headline really is starting from different place too, which, creating other, not disorganized, but this one, the hairline relatively starting from the exactly same size, so maybe
Yeah.
that's what I can explain.
The color was mostly around the idea that grays are shirts and the blue ones are comments.
So first the question, when you switch into news, are you going to switch it back where you're leading with the news stories instead of the person, or is this going to be the same for all of the?
Yeah, so for the top news, we do have a different design in which we kind of eliminate the seats. And we are working on it, yeah. So maybe
Structurally similar.
Structurally similar. Yeah, we're gonna like reserve this space to say, to call it out, something like most shared, top news, maybe do it in a more subtle way.
And then my other comment is, I actually really appreciate how quickly you guys are trying to turn around the feedback. That's why we really think internally. And if I remember correctly, your target for iPad is people who are actually active users already. So we're a little closer than some of our other products we test on ourselves. But I do think, I think that the subtlety of blue versus gray, I just personally think it adds complication that I don't think users will understand what that is or care. And kind of like you had in the previous group where you have the two different size pictures based on whether they said something or
Yeah.
not, it's kind of like, who notices that? So that might be something to simplify. But I do feel like, to echo these guys' comments, I think you're doing the right thing by the information architecture and thinking about the socialness of our site and what people care about as people. But I feel like this looks like the iPad we would have designed a year ago using our current site visuals and not like the new iPhone simplified plus KD stuff. Like for some reason with the old one, and I hate to say these like really vague words that like, design clients use, but it's like punched more and it was harder and then like, this is very like, it's the soft blue and the soft gray and it's like kind of how our site looks today and, I don't know, it didn't feel as much like we're pushing forward as opposed to pushing the site. I'm sorry.
And again, I get the box in a box comment, but on the other hand, on the KD is box free. On the entire home, if you look at the home page in the top one, I think I'm mistaken, but there are a lot of ones.
I think actually it was closer to KD.
Yeah, that's true.
What happens if, so the bubble, or what?
Worth it for me to pull that open. Maybe I'll let Jessica give her feedback as I find it.
Oh, I was saying that, I was gonna say that with the old look, like with the big photo, in the side and the boxes, everyone seems to really like that style, but the information, how you put the bubbles on top and the people in the newer one, so I was wondering if it would be, when you're talking, I was wondering if it would be really just take what you did inside the box of the new one and just kind of put it in the box and the layout you had in the old one. Like combine, like, everything.
One of the things that might be interesting to folks, we can't easily do it here, but I encourage folks to take a look afterwards. We printed out a number both of our grids, and looking at folks like the Ford Insight and various other things, and like, we had a suspicion that our boxes, that our grids might be too complex. And then when we started to actually look at some of the other folks, like, wow, we're actually really complex. Like, there's also a question of like where we want to sit. You can imagine a continuum where on one end you have like the Wall Street Journal. I'm a newspaper, I'm lots of very small type, and then on the other end you have like Vogue, like, or things that are almost no, where the text is very, very unimportant. It's mostly, or actually not even Vogue, I think it's like a gardening magazine or a cooking magazine, where it's like almost all about the photo imagery and sort of going through that. And we tried to think about where we wanted to be on that continuum. At the moment, we are more, I'd say we are closer to a newspaper than we are to a photo-rich magazine. We can talk about sort of like, again, where, I hear some reactions about maybe we're too far, and we can talk about that, but we wanted, the most important thing we wanted to achieve was a relaxing, calm reading experience. That's what we were looking for.
I think, this actually, I got stronger, sense of like magazine, because, if you look at it, there's always like box and different sizes in the one page, which those, I think I had a problem with the even distribution, like 4 or 2. If, when that happened, it seems kind of odd, like two of the different articles and side by side.
There's some more dynamic to this one.
Yeah, we try to put some variations, because you're not going to look at it one at a time, you're going to look at it, in a string, so you're going to like go through that, so we try to balance that out.
It seems like you're commenting on a hierarchy, like everything's equal. So maybe that's something we need to do, we don't have the grades that have all the content pieces.
Good shot.
I think it's really refreshing seeing the social gestures or the observations up at the top. I don't think it distracts from the title itself because the title is so bold and big in comparison. One thing though I would pay attention to is the leading on the actual article paragraph. I like the leading in any of the comments, even though I think the profile page itself, but I feel like it's a little too loose. I'm starting to read between the lines rather than, it doesn't bother me so much when there's such a huge, long article, but if you look at some of the smaller content blocks, the spacing is a bit wide.
And Shona, do you agree that it's a flex page?
Or not necessarily. I don't think it looks less page, actually. Why do you think it looks less page?
I think the one before just was more page. Isn't the dark lines, it's the gray background with the bottom, there's no, again, I understand the bottom, like there's no page.
One other FYI, which I think you might show, I don't know. So we're going to show calendar. Do you guys have something in there? Yeah. So you'll see like that box we have right now with the big image and then the gray and then the words on top. Like we call that a template 12. You'll see it's no longer here, but we are reserving it for the spotlight. So when you first launch the app, like that's of all of the pages in the app. We talked about the couch and coffee. Okay, right here. Like this is the page that has to punch and it has to give value. But one of the major things that Donna found from user research was people were looking not just for news. They're like, well, I have other news sources. Like, give me my LinkedIn insights. Tell me about
people who view my profile tell me about updates within my network. And so we really, really want to make sure that, that's one of the other major differences we're adding, is cleaning that up.
Is there a way to create some sort of page in this one, maybe any sort of big article or top story maybe has this sort of thing within the news feed?
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, I was talking about that, so, okay. So, I mean, something like this, you'll see is that, you know, this does not have a header. Features like how many shares there were, being something in the day, kind of iconography. So another way kind of maybe differentiating the stream that's not, it wasn't shared by someone, it was kind of inserted by us. You know, the alternative is doing something like this right here, where it kind of utilizes the same design. Says like, you know, the Wall Street Journal shared this with 900 shares, or you can kind of break it out a little bit more. So.
Yeah, we're hoping like to differentiate comments, shares, you know, that should have been provided by a source, like, you know, last company. In that case, we can choose something more unique, but.
Or even go bigger.
Yeah, and one thing in regard to the lens, so before you had the box problems, I think now you're starting to have the line problems. There's like lines everywhere, different type of lines. So you have dotted lines and you have straight lines, and some are white and some are gray and some are double, so.
That's what I was
Like,
gonna comment.
make sure
Okay.
you.
Speech bubble,
Yeah, that's-
what's the
that's
difference
last-
in speech bubble?
Please say.
Some speech comes from the middle and some comes from the left.
Yeah, this is an early,
Oh,
this
this
is
is
an
the
early
modern.
design.
Oh, yeah.
We were exploring a lot of stuff.
48 hours, dude, 48 hours, very hot. Very hot for me.
supposed to be final.
Yeah, this
Well,
was-
it's supposed to be perfect. Yeah, the tough part, just to be clear, is actually we do need to be final by about the end of the week. You know, when I say final, I mean.
Oh, really?
I mean, implementation final, I mean, coded. We're gonna be done. Yes, so.
We're moving fast on the mobile.
I think it was.
3 a.m. to 5 a.m., that's how we do it.
Yeah.
So I assume you guys aren't going skiing, is that safe to assume?
We're gonna have to do that too. Look,
They're gonna code while they're skiing, okay.
There's Wi-Fi on the bus.
Chest lump display.
Village.
So I was just gonna say, like, I actually agree with them that I actually like the old design a lot better. I think it's much more interesting to look at. And also, I feel like this is really tight, like there's not a lot of breathing room. And so, and then all the lines coming in as well, it just doesn't speak to me as, and there's no, even though I know you guys are using the colors as distinction, I felt like the other accents that you put in really helped make that distinction and helped us make the product look more unique and I feel like more like LinkedIn, whereas this I could see as any other site, right? And so,
Board. No, say that.
So are there gonna be enough lines in the final one?
tell us what you think, like,
You
this
like
is the
that?
first time, if you guys have, like, we may wanna do it offline, but like, if you guys have specific comments about the lines, that'd be great.
And also, just one other thing, is there any, hope of integrating the data good in the iPad stuff?
So, I talked about it, like, my understanding is, step one, while those are design complete, they haven't been built yet, and in addition to not being built, they don't know what data platform they're putting them on, so like, we gotta, but I mentioned, as they select the data platform, please think about how you wanna expose them via an API, we would love to.
We hope to actually work on common together, uptime, that might, even like replacing one of these modules with a data good element might help really start to change up.
Love the idea. I don't know that it'll make it for 1.0, but like, if you, I don't know what your timeline is, but if it's fast tracked and like it's coming soon, we'd love to do it.
I have a comment, it's not so much on the iPad, but I think it's some of the people in this room. I actually think that was something in big growth and the type of feedback that you're getting, not only from us, but from the company, of like, the basic like information architecture and visual stuff, like, hey, we're gonna release it out to the company, and a week and a half later, not only do we have to have all, feedback, collected, iterated on, implemented, and everything so that we can launch externally, like, that doesn't seem like the right amount of
Well,
time for a, like,
let me rephrase
feedback project.
Let me rephrase slightly. So, we are moving fast. So we haven't officially announced, but we as a team are going to focus on quality over speed. And so our initial date that we were going to try to ship, we are going to ship that, in order to do this work and to try to address these things. We're going to release a second beta, around the end of the month, out to the company again. And so like look for an email from an each both with a summary of this is what we heard, this is how we're addressing it, and here's the new data. So we are trying to shift it out. We do still have to move quickly even within those constraints.
Yeah, and I bring it up just for all of us so that we
Yeah.
can, because I run into some projects as well, and it's like, oh, well, it's like this checkbox, almost like, oh, we have to release to the company because we're supposed to do that, and we'll collect feedback, but then there's never enough, like, they don't plan enough time to actually do anything with that feedback.
Yeah, and-
Because this, like, I kind of like use it, you
Yeah.
know, because there's the first glance visuals, which are important because it's your first impression, but then there's also actually a useful tool. Can I actually read it? Is it, you know, is it something I want to come back to and like actually go through multiple pages, or is it like, oh, that's really pretty, and then I'm like, but I can't ever parse it.
Totally.
It's hard to know that when it's just looking at it.
So right, like what we had, for people who use the app, there's this interstitial page when you click on an article and you go through it. That was there that like right before the beta. Before that, we had this like pull over thing, and I was initially opposed to doing this interstitial page because I felt like you weren't making progress and that. And then I started using it. I'm like, oh, actually, I could immediately A, it loads in. B, I find I start reading very quickly, and so it was one of these things where it's like, well, there's what you think you see, and then when you start to use it. So yeah, no, I agree. That's why, like, up until now, we've had a limited set of people with eyes on it inside the team, but we're trying to put it out now and get a ton of feedback. And really, to be clear, the sets of changes we're going to make sort of fall into two categories. There's the really big things, like fundamentally changing the grid. That's a huge thing. And then and we're going to talk about some of the other big things, like the calendar and Spotlight. And then there's the nits. And like the nits, like Hans was the master of the nits. He sent us like a dozen pieces of feedback of like ridiculously small alignment, this text is kind of stuff. And our deal with the engineering team on that is, to a very large degree, these guys have the ability to work with the engineering team and they don't even necessarily have to prioritize with engineers about exactly what they do. If they want to make a change, they can make a change. But we're going to time box it. So it's like, you have X amount of time, do as many of those do whatever you think is important, and go ahead and do them. The other thing that's been cool is we've been able to get Jess actually set up with the box, so he's actually changing the front end code, which means it can happen faster than you have the time.
And we do, and I think we're going to be addressing all the visual minor things. I think for me, it's more like a process than do everything. I can, I'm trying to do is ideate in view to figure out what makes sense, conceptually speaking, and what makes sense for a brand. And then from here, we can make decisions. Oh, this is sales right. Let's spend 20 hours on one box. So I think we're working on that. I think this is mostly for us just conceptually it doesn't make sense. It's like the layout feels okay. The type art feels good because in that way we can kind of like spend more time like tweaking those things. So, but yeah, I mean we're working around that. It's just wow.
Yeah.
25.
Second up, let's talk about Spotlight and Calendar.
Okay, so we're starting off with asking the user if they want to add their calendar. So we will, come to the Spotlight page with a nice big story up here, which we're using that template for this design. These visuals are not totally final here. This is more about the UI. We'll go into a little bit more visual stuff, and Jorge will show you even more. I'm just going to walk through the UI for the calendar. But you can also see that we have who's doing your profile, job changes, and group stuff. So we're sort of rolling up really important things on that front page.
That's a group.
Yeah. So then you do questions at 18.
There's another design as well that
Yeah.
blows it. There's two different states. That I think is the created or I don't know.
Yeah.
There will be groups represented.
The reason I asked, and this could just be because I'm not in an NPR group, and NPR is also like a more than a group of activity. But there's nothing that says group, or group or anything, and we always run into problems, like sometimes group A has the word group in it, sometimes it doesn't, and stuff like that, but it just is like that.
So you'll come onto this page and we'll ask you if you want to add your calendar. If you say no, then it will disappear and it will be replaced with new. You can go and do studies. So if you add yes, it will be replaced with your calendar. We show you the day, the current day. You can scroll up to 3 days at a time. So here we go, showing some scrolling. I'm not sure if we're gonna do yesterday, today, or tomorrow, or today, tomorrow, the next day, but it will show 3 days. As you scroll, you see the next day, divider here, and as it hits the top will change to the next day. And the third one, and there will be an end point. Two options for no appointments. If we can modify the grid, we'll shift over news or some sort of information like the user profile and take up only as much of the box if you don't have anything for a 2-day period. Or we are looking at
Zoom out. There's only one out here, it's fine.
Oh. So this isn't the actual art, but just something.
Sorry,
Something that will indicate that you have nothing for the next 3 days. And maybe the text can change based on what kind of user you are.
I like that event. Is there any way to do that if there are appointments in the calendar?
Yeah, this would show up,
There
you mean
are.
at the very bottom. Yeah.
Oh, at the very bottom.
Yeah, we could do something at the very bottom or something like that.
Well, the ad event opens your iCal,
Yeah.
takes you out of the app.
So we don't want to maybe advertise that, but if you don't have any events, kind of have that access.
Amanda?
Yes.
So this is kind of the reverse of the email plugins where we have LinkedIn within the email client. Here is at least the calendar part of the client within LinkedIn. So I mean, I think it's really, really intriguing. So what's the discussion about doing that on an iPad as opposed to, why wouldn't we do that on the main website? I mean, I'm assuming you guys have reasons.
Well, so we're doing this on the phone and on iPad. Like, I was show you, we're bringing spotlights to the phone app as well. So actually, one quick thing on launch plan. Our goal is to launch iPad, iPhone updated with calendar and spotlight, a new Windows 7 app, and a new BlackBerry app, all at the same time. We'll see if that happens or not. BlackBerry app may or may not happen. So that's just in the launch plan. Your other question about like why not on the website?
That's the one remaining, right?
Part of the reason is it's super easy for us because we can get it from your phone trivially.
Oh, okay.
Like you have easy access to access that content.
Yeah.
If you want to do it from the website, then you have to go through and add account flow and type in your. Well, let me take it back. I would love it if the website built support for calendar. It's going to be more work because you'll have to do all of the sort of setup stuff, adding the server URL and the permissions to do that. Versus in this, we can just say, "You want it? Okay, you're done." Because iOS and Android make it that easy.
And actually, the subscription team was starting to work on something like that. I was going to start with an email, so start meeting that. I'm going to get sent to an email that they had started talking about doing something on the site as well.
And the use case is the mobile user, and they're going to meetings, and they have their iPad with them, and rather than them having to exit out of LinkedIn and go into another app, they can see all this right in
It's
LinkedIn.
more than that, it's also pre-meeting intelligence. So like,
Sure.
we looked at what sort of the thing, why do people use the phone app today? One of the major reasons is I'm about to go into a meeting, let me quick launch LinkedIn and search for the person who I'm meeting with.
Sure.
Now you won't even have to do a search, it'll just
Right.
be, here's the people you're meeting with, and here's all the information about them who you have in common.
But you could also do that if we did a plug-in within the email client, right?
Except the iPhone and Android and iPad do not support plugins inside of
Okay.
their apps.
And I think it's really intriguing. I'm going to be fascinated to see, how people use it.
And this, I mean, there's swarms coming out as well. I thought that was going to be desktop.
We're still,
That's the discussion.
well, we have issues with problems.
Yeah, it should be desktop, hopefully it's truly desktop. But yeah, this is sort of the beginning of us getting into calendars, or the
Yeah.
advanced calendars.
Interesting.
So is this